Welcome back to our Commitment 2026 coverage, primary election night here in California. We're covering a number of races, including all of the statewide offices, and we've already seen some candidates projected to be advancing now to November. I'm Edie Lambert.
And I'm Galston Dart. We've got your congressional races covered, too. Voters now, some finding themselves voting in new districts, some politicians running in new districts. We'll sort it all out for you.
And I'm Curtis Bang. We have a team of reporters all across California bringing you live results and reaction from campaign parties or in Sacramento, the Bay Area, and Southern California for you tonight.
And I'm Ashley Zavala, and we have been diving into this race for the last several months. We have two political experts with us, Democratic strategist Steve Maviglio and Tim Rosales, a Republican strategist, who are helping with our analysis tonight.
All right, let's start with a look at the governor's race, the race at the top of the ticket when it comes to the statewide offices. We're going to show you the top four right now. The Republican Steve Hilton in the lead. Javier Becerra, the leading Democrat right now with about 25% of the vote. This is what the polling has showed, and those two are really close at this point. Tom Steyer just trailing them by about 5 points.
And we can also go right now to Andrea Flores, who's been covering the Becerra campaign right now. She's in Los Angeles with the latest on how things are going, and she has a California icon there with her tonight.
Yes, I'm joined by civil rights icon Dolores Huerta. Dolores, thank you so much for taking a quick second to speak with us. What brings you out to Javier Becerra's campaign event tonight, and why did you feel it was so important to be here?
Well, I felt that I had to be here with the rest of many of our Latino leaders and labor leaders and women leaders because we're so excited about the possibility that Javier is going to be someone we can vote for in November to become our next governor.
You have worked with Becerra closely. What do you think he brings to the position of governor should he be elected?
Well, he has the most experience as a congressman, as the head of Health and Human Services, as Attorney General of the state of California. I mean, none of the candidates even match him in terms of the experience that they have in governing. And so I think we're very, very fortunate that he made the decision to run for governor.
Should he be governor, what do you think he could do to serve not only Democrats, but Republicans and all Californians?
Well, we know that we're going to be going through some difficult times right now with all of the budget cuts, and we're facing some very difficult moments. But I think that he is strong enough, and he's shown that as Attorney General. He cares enough, as he's shown as head of Health and Human Services, that he will do the best for all of the people of the state of California.
And who are you hoping that he focuses on in this next chapter of his possible political career?
Well, we know that there have been a lot of budget cuts, and a lot of people are going to be struggling in terms of even getting the food and the medical services that they need. So it's not going to be an easy job. It's going to be a very, very hard job for him to do. But I think that, as I said before, he's got the experience and he'll be able to deal with it. And so we have to do as much as we can to support him so that he can do the job also, and to make sure we get him into office in the first place.
All right, Dolores, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So yeah, we're here at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes here in downtown Los Angeles. Supporters say that Becerra has that experience, that statewide and county and, you know, outside of California, across the country has that name recognition. Some opponents say that they need something different. Maybe that California needs a change of pace, another direction. And to those opponents, Becerra has said, this isn't a red or blue issue. This is an issue about me and you. So again, just, you know, getting the pulse from the crowd here, it's a very upbeat night. They're feeling very confident. Of course, we know he has been leading in the polls. Those votes continue to be counted tonight. But again, here live in Los Angeles, we've been speaking with voters about the issues that have really impacted them, and that is housing, affordability, utility costs. We know that within the first 100 days, Becerra has said that he would work to pause or freeze insurance rates and utility rates. So those are just some of the things that he has campaigned on. on. Also, health care and public safety. Those are some of the issues that he has said are really important to him as he moves forward in his campaign. So again, just some of the things that people here have said that is really important to them. We have been speaking with voters across the city of Los Angeles since we got here yesterday about what they think, about what they need and what they're focusing on. And here's what they had to say, if we could pull up that sound. All right, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Andrea, thank you. And wow, I mean, she has been 97 years old, we should point out. Dolores Huerta.
Yeah.
And she has been a leader for such a long time, and most recently redefining Cesar Chavez's legacy and stepping forward with that as well. One of the things that I think you've been pointing out is that we haven't seen a lot of leaders like her kind of coming in and endorsing.
Yeah, I mean, the highest profile Californians have not been stepping up to endorse this race. I mean, just starting with Governor Gavin Newsom, who has stayed out of it. Nancy Pelosi has stayed out of it. Senator Adam Schiff, I saw, was asked today by CNN, and he would not share who he voted for. Alex Padilla, our U.S. Senator, same thing. Kamala Harris also laying off. And it's been, I mean, because this crowded race, there's had a lot of twists and turns. Javier Becerra slungshot to the top of the polls and to the top of the ticket right now because Representative Eric Swalwell dropped out, and that, I mean, gave a lot of folks cold feet to come out publicly. And so a lot of the powerful groups coalesced around Javier Becerra with, I mean, he's been a California politician for decades. And so it's interesting to see, though, that, you know, while Dolores Huerta is at his party, everyone else is kind of staying home and watching these privately.
When you say cold feet, is that like, who's the next scandal? I mean, is that what we're talking about? Just the...
Yeah, I mean, Javier Becerra has his own baggage right now, considering that his own campaign funds are at the center of this federal investigation that started with the Biden administration. His former chief of staff, who is accused of stealing nearly $250,000 from him.
Pled out.
Right, and pled out, was supposed to be sentenced this week. That has since been moved, we learned today, now postponed another 2 months. And then his former campaign advisor, Dana Williamson, also a very powerful force in California politics. There's a lot happening. Democrats, I mean, again, held on to their ballots. A lot of those results are coming in late because people wanted to see what shook out in this race. And so a lot of questions going into November, though, about, you know, just how voters make of all of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the other current top leader in the governor's race, Liz Mitri, who's in Huntington Beach covering the Steve Hilton campaign, and they've got to be feeling pretty good at this point in the night.
Oh, yeah, they are very excited here. It's loud in here. That's why I was trying to make sure I could even hear you. People are pumped. The room is packed. You can probably hear the music is going. We just heard a little bit ago from Republican Senator Tony Strickland, who got the crowd really riled up. They were chanting Steve Hilton's name. And, of course, we've got the big screens up with the preliminary results. And each time they get updated, the crowd is just erupting in cheers and applause. People here believe that Steve Hilton will bring change to California, change that they feel is necessary. Hilton says he's fighting for working people, for small businesses. He wants to end what he says is, quote, insane bureaucracy. Now, even though he's doing well, and he has been doing well in the polls, he says over the last few days he's been fighting as if he's in third place, which we have seen. He's been traveling up and down the state doing town halls. He was in Santa Monica. He was in Fresno just a few days ago. A lot of TV appearances, but now that work is done. He says he's feeling excited. We heard from him about an hour before the polls closed, and it's 9 o'clock. We think we're going to hear from him in about an hour, so we'll see what he has to say then. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Lizzie. And Ashley, I mean, this is the race that people have been watching most closely here in California.
Right. This is the race that's been taking up all of the oxygen and energy. And let's just bring in our political experts, Republican strategist Tim Rosales, Democratic strategist Steve Maviglio. We've been unpacking this for months now, but just now tonight, what do you make so far of the numbers that seem to really be matching up with a lot of the polls that we saw?
Yeah, I think, you know, we both declared Mr. Becerra dead on arrival months ago.
You did.
And here here we are with the big egg on our face because he has had a phenomenal comeback. And I think the chances of a D on D November seem to be fading because the ratio of Hilton winning so many more Republicans than Bianco right now is going to hold. And so there's going to be a lot more Democratic ballots. Those numbers are going to change, but it still looks like it's going to be a Hilton-Becerra matchup.
Tim, what do you make of the space between Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco right now in the results?
Well, I think a couple things. Number one, when President Trump came out and put that marker on, Steve Hilton as the endorsed Republican in the race, that means something to Republicans. And I think that was a differentiator because between Bianco and Hilton, there's not much policy difference. There's some personality difference.
An accent.
An accent, yeah. One's a sheriff in kind of Yosemite Sam style, but outside of that, there really isn't too much differentiating the two. So when the president came out, kind of put his marker there, that was number one. And then also, I think then Republicans began to kind of fall in line and say, hey, okay, this is the guy who we're going to choose and lead us into November. And I think it was just as simple as that.
I saw Steve has Hilton, I should say, has a press conference already planned for tomorrow morning. Right. That endorsement from President Donald Trump, does that help or hurt him in November?
Well, in California, it certainly hurts him in November. But let's be fair, the Democrats are going to tie any Republican to President Trump anyway. So whether or not President Trump endorses a particular candidate or not, that is kind of the Democratic campaign playbook. It's an effective playbook in California, but I think that's where they're going to go.
That said, Steve, does Tom Steyer have a lane here before we let you go?
It's possible. There's a lot of votes to be counted, but it's not looking too great for him right now.
All right, Steve and Tim, we'll be back. All right, we'll send it back to you, Edie and Golston.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of numbers to be counted, a lot of ballots to be tallied still, but we do have some projected candidates here to advance to November. The incumbent Republican Tom McClintock is projected to advance to November in the 5th Congressional District. He has been in politics for a long time here in California. He's in his 9th term in Congress, seeking a 10th term. He also spent 22 years in the State Assembly and the State Senate before that.
All right, we've got some other numbers coming in right now. Let's look at District 9 right now, and you can see the incumbent Democrat Josh Harder there advances to the November election, and the person behind him right now is John McBride there with 22% of the vote here in early counting.
Let's take a look at a couple of the statewide offices. Secretary of State, you have Shirley Weber projected to advance to November, and now a check mark for the Republican as well, Donald Wagner. So that's the matchup you're going to see in November. She was the first black Secretary of State in California history, appointed by Governor Newsom back in 2021 when Alex Padilla was appointed to the U.S. Senate. And before that, she served 8 years in the Assembly. Don Wagner is an Orange County supervisor, the former mayor of Irvine. So both of them will be moving on to the November election.
All right, we also have some results now for AG, and you can see that both of these are your top two candidates that will advance to the November election, the incumbent Rob Bonta and Michael Gates, again, both advancing to the November election for your California Attorney General.
And let's look at the state controller position and the Democrat incumbent Malia Cohen with a strong showing there, again, also projected to advance to November. Herb Morgan coming in second. He is a chief investment officer based out of San Diego, running on the promise of exposing fraud in government.
Let's go to Sacramento County right now. Denton Cortez is standing by. He's been watching as the votes have been coming in as the counting continues tonight. Denton.
Yeah, it'll continue out through the night, Golson. They are working hard at work. This is where it truly begins, right? They're going to be checking those ballots, certifying, making sure everything's great, no spills, no, missed balloted, ballots as well. But I have one worker here, Sam. You're telling me how early you've been up here working.
So I got here at 6:30, but started at 7. So I've been at this for like 14 hours now.
14 hours. And how's the process been for you? I'm sure it's been ramping up as we get later into the night.
Honestly, when I got here, 5 of these things were full of these, and I have to put zip ties through all of these holes. So I've done close to like 50,000 of them. Wow. And I only found 2 ballots. Wow. So we're doing good.
Doing good. And then what time tomorrow do you say you were going to be starting?
Start at 6.
6
Get off at 10. in tonight.
Bright and early. So this is just the amount of hard work goes into these elections, right, guys? And they're going to have to go through all these right here in this cart. All these ballots are going to be checking, making sure everything is filled out right. And then from there, they go to this special room in the back here, the tabulation room that's highly secure. You need a special badge to get into there, and I have more information on that. Can you kind of walk us through kind of once they're kind of, you know, checked and they get into that room, what kind of happens?
Yeah, so once we have them all processed, they move into tabulation, which is where they get counted. We put them through our tabulation machines. It's a very secure room. I don't even have access to that room. So we have all of our staff in there working on tabulation, and then it's reported out to all of our residents.
Wow, and this will continue out through the night?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, they'll be here probably until midnight, maybe a little after.
Wow. And what are they doing here in these digital computers, vertical ones?
So this is called adjudication. So these are the ballots that the tabulator can't read. So they're going through and determining, reviewing for voter intent.
So this is all the background, behind the scenes work that goes into these elections, and they will be doing this well into the night, into tomorrow. So as we get more of those updates, we'll be sure to share with you guys. But live, back to you guys in the studio.
Denson, thank you. And elections workers are also working hard in San Joaquin County. Anahita Jafari has been watching that work at the registrar's office. What are you seeing there right now?
Well, we're actually at the ROV warehouse here in San Joaquin County, as you mentioned, Edie, and the excitement is just beginning. Every time a truck pulls up, people start clapping and cheering. They're ready to get these ballots processed. I'll actually show you that area where those trucks have been pulling in, and that's where people will begin boxing the paper ballots. And so right in front of that, you'll see a red screen, and that's tracking the equipment coming back, and that'll change colors as more equipment comes. You can already see a couple of green boxes on there as well. More towards the center now of the warehouse, you'll also see machines with people standing and sitting near them, and those are for people to count the ballots from each precinct. And so far, officials say there are over 15,000 people who voted in person today and about 81,000 who voted by mail. And just like Denson mentioned over there with volunteers, we're hearing the same thing with volunteers here. They've been out here since 6 in the morning, and they're planning on being out here until late tonight. Some say around 10, but could even go later than that. Sending it back to you.
Anahita, thank you so much. All right, we have another projection in District 13. Let's show those numbers. The incumbent, Adam Gray, is projected now to advance to November. We should point out that this was so tight 2 years ago. He won this by less than a 1% margin. It was the closest U.S. House race that year. So let's check in with Ashley, because these districts are redrawn. So what are you seeing this time?
Yeah, I mean, part of Proposition 50, which voters approved to try to give Democrats in California more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, this was drawn to make Adam Gray's life a little easier, because the first time he ran for this seat, he and John Duarte at the time had to attend congressional orientation at the same time, only for Gray to find out he had actually lost. He ran again last cycle in 2022 and advanced, and is now, I mean, perhaps is hoping to hold on to the seat, but again, Proposition 50 is trying to make it so that it's easier for him to do so. Kevin Lincoln, poised to potentially also move on. He is the former mayor of Stockton. He's also tried to face Josh Harder last cycle in congressional in the Congressional District 9 down in the Stockton area, and now he's running for this seat.
So yeah, Gray, beneficiary, it would seem, with Prop 50.
Perhaps, we'll see.
We'll see.
But that was redrawn to, again, I mean, fill it with more Democrats so that it wasn't so tight.
Room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to that point, you were talking more Prop 50, and you've got some things to show us.
Yeah, we want to talk about District 1 here. We have some movement here. Again, this is an interesting one, because this is a district that went from Republican to it getting redrawn to where it's going to be Democrat. This is a special election that we're having for District 1, because the incumbent, Doug LaMalfa, who knew about the Prop 50 changes about a month before he died, wasn't happy about it, but has passed away. And so now somebody has to be elected to fill his seat for this Republican area for the rest of his term through the end of the year. Let's show you the results right now. And it looks like his Mentee Republican James Gallagher, with 61% of the vote, has this healthy lead right here. We do believe that he is going to take over for his mentor for the rest of his term. In fact, we have a statement that he just put out, and it says the results tonight prove what we have known for many years. Doug LaMalfa was loved and respected by the people of his district. I am humbled that the voters of the 1st District have placed their faith in me in the same way to be a voice and a champion for our North State community. So he is going to fill the current District 1 seat until the end of the term. But I want to show you the new District 1, which was redrawn. And if you remember from the last one, this used to be District 1 up here, which is very conservative country, but it has now been drawn to go over the coastal foothills here and on down into the North Bay. And that's where they have a lot of Democratic votes. And so I want to show you the results for the new District 1. And right now, well, James Gallagher has 46% of the vote, with about 45% of the expected votes in, and the incumbent for that area, Mike McGuire, right now is in second, and you see there's a distant third right here with Audrey Denny. So again, 2 ballots went out for these districts, and now we know what's going to happen for the rest of this term for District 1, and we're still waiting to find out who the top 2 will be who will advance to the runoff in November to fill the seat for District 1. So we're keeping an eye on it.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're just going to keep in with that Prop 50 theme, because District 3 was changed to help maybe flip to Democrats. That was their idea.
Yeah, and we saw Ami Bera move from District 6 to District 3 for that exact
And Kylie
reason.
moved out of District 3.
Kylie moved out and actually changed his affiliation from Republican to Independent. But looking here at District 3, at this point, with 39% of the results coming in, it's really looking pretty close between Ami Bera and Rob Tucker, the Republican challenger there. But no incumbent again for District 3, even though we have an incumbent from District 6 moving into that spot.
We can show you what District 4 is looking like right now. You can see the incumbent Mike Thompson with a fairly strong lead right now, with the early count still going on. And behind him right now is Republican Ray Reel. So you can see 23%.
And this is a very competitive race right here. I mean, we have seen the commercials on this particular race. We have Mike Thompson, who is the longtime incumbent, seeking his 15th term in Congress. And then we have Eric Jones, a Democrat, a businessman who raised twice as much money, but his ads pushing for a generational change. And right now, the immediate numbers that have come in, it looks like Mike Thompson is at number 1.
And again, that's another one of those Democrat versus Democrat races.
Exactly right.
You know, I did want to ask you, Ashley, about the tactics there, because you look at who votes in these elections, and it tends to be the older voters who are getting their ballots in. So in that particular race in District 4, you had the younger candidate, Jones, comparing Thompson to moldy milk and expired milk and throwing them in the trash.
Yeah.
And you just wonder, how does that play with the people who are actually voting?
Exactly, especially in an election like this, where there's just not a lot of, I mean, at least in the beginning, a lot of Democratic energy to get out there. And so the people who are voting are, as you said, I mean, maybe more traditional voters who have picked who they picked. And so we'll see how that race turns out.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the balance of power in Congress, there's a lot to unpack there, just with President Donald Trump, his unpopularity in this state. I mean, according to all of the polls. Tim, I would just want to start with you, especially just given that this whole Proposition 50 and the way District 1 especially was just completely changed. Doug LaMalfa, longtime Republican, held this seat. His mentee, James Gallagher, now likely to obviously filling it for the rest of the year. But what do you make of this potential flip that could happen with a Democrat who seeks that seat later this year?
Well, just look at the geography if you're familiar with the North State, and you have, you know, the northeastern part of California that couldn't be more different than Marin and Sonoma County on the west coast, and they're drawn in together, and the same member of Congress is going to have to represent both regions. Suburban, wealthy, largely older white voters on the northwestern coast, and the northeastern, it is conservative, it is older, white voters as well, but just a very different type of electorate, and whoever represents that seat is going to have to do both.
All right, we're going to hold it right there. We're actually going to head to Tom Steyer now, who is speaking in the Bay Area right now.
And you know we finished really strong. We're here tonight because our state is in crisis, and so is our nation. California is the richest state in the richest country in the history of the world. It's unacceptable that right now so many Californians struggle to make ends meet. We're about to see the world's first trillionaires, probably in California. We're already witnessing an explosion of wealth concentrated in the hands of the very, very few. The gap between the rich and the poor grows wider by the minute. Prices are higher than ever. Faith in government's ability to do anything is lower than ever. Californians are being priced out of their homes every single day. While it happens, we see billionaires do whatever they have to get whatever they can out of the system, and then do everything they can to hoard their wealth and avoid paying taxes. And we see corporations continue to rig the system for themselves, raising your prices to juice their profits. Screw that. California deserves better. Working people deserve better. Democracy matters. Justice matters. The truth matters. Anyone who says otherwise is invested in a system rigged against you. Here's the truth. For every bill that's too high, there's a special interest profiting off keeping it there. They want you to believe that's inevitable, that it's just how the market works. But that's bullshit. We don't have to accept this. This campaign has been about proving that. My vision for California is based on a simple idea. The well-being of the most vulnerable shouldn't depend on corporations and billionaires choosing to do the right thing. We should have a system based on fairness, not on asking for fairness, where the most privileged pay their fair share not by charity, but by law. A system that reminds them of what I've been saying since the very beginning of this campaign. You didn't do it all yourselves. The soon-to-be tech trillionaires built their wealth here because California enabled them to. Because ordinary Californians worked hard and sacrificed day after day, year after year, to create the system where those billionaires could realize the dreams they came to this state to pursue. The California I believe in is a California where recognizing that hard work and honoring that sacrifice is fundamental to assigning credit and to designing our society. This race, more than any other in recent memory, laid bare the basic operating principle of American politics, a very uncomfortable truth. Money talks. In this race, we saw what corporate money tends to ask for: higher rents, lower wages, permission to pollute, to price gouge, and to treat workers as disposable. And in this race, we saw the way that money from some of the wealthiest people and corporations in the history of the world mobilized when I said I'd tax it fairly. We saw a direct causal relationship between my plans for change and the $55 million of corporate money that flooded in to stop me. Single-payer health care? Here come the insurance companies. Clean energy? Here comes Chevron. Taxing AI? What about Meta? Lowering electric bills? Hello, PG&E. To quote FDR, never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred. But here's the thing. Their spending wasn't personal. It wasn't about who I am. It was about what the corporations believed I could do. For the corporations, elections are always about policy. For the corporations, politics isn't about parties, it's about profits. They do not think in red and blue teams. They think in red and black ink. They think in dollar signs and balance sheets. Their priorities and decisions have proved soulless. They're totally unconcerned with the well-being of working people, with the health of our democracy, with the very concept of justice. They will support who and whatever they have to in order to usher in a future that is beneficial to their bottom lines. It's why they uniformly back Trump. It's why they uniformly oppose progressives, and none of that was unique to this race. Here they were just especially brazen, because here they were especially scared. The dollar amounts are different, but in elections everywhere, the principle is the same. You want to fight for working people at the expense of corporate profits? Watch corporations do everything in their power to stop you. Usually they try harder to hide what they're doing. And usually they're confident that if they spend enough, whoever's threatening their profits will be forced to back down and go away. This is how working people have been priced out of our politics. This is how the system protects itself. And I'll be the first to say it, that isn't how the system should work. You shouldn't have to be a billionaire to run on single payer. Or to challenge monopolies, or to call out a corrupt system when you see it. But the system depends on its ability to crush anyone who tries. And I know that there are many, many people, activists and organizers and ordinary working people who are out there today and who have been out there for decades, saying and doing all of these things brilliantly and fearlessly. Those are the people I'm in this race for. Those are the people I'm in this race with. The corporate interests came at us with everything they had, and we didn't back down. We were absolutely uncompromising in our values and our vision for California, and together we've scared the hell out of the corporate interests who are used to getting it their own way. We exposed the fact that their power depends on a system that is fundamentally corrupt. We showed with clarity and conviction that we do not have to accept the system they've built as inevitable. We proved something FDR said almost a century ago, that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob. And we showed that a better California is possible, and that we know what it looks like, and we know how we'll get there together, day by day, vote by vote. Because together, all of us in this room believe in a not-so-radical idea: California can work for working people. Because we believe in a California where we have single-payer health care. A California where we have clean air to breathe and water to drink. A California where young people can imagine a future in the place they grew up. A California where corporations and billionaires who got rich here and then pulled the ladder up behind them do pay their fair share and are actually proud of their contribution to the 21st century society. That's us, that the rest of the world admires. That's what we're fighting for together. And that's what the corporations are hell-bent on stopping, because they know what we know. If we win, corporations lose. I've always been an optimist, and tonight I remain an optimist. None of this is far off. These dreams are not too big. The better California we've been fighting for is possible, and it's coming. I know that because I know Californians. I spent the last 6 months traveling up and down the state, talking to people in the Bay, in LA, in the Inland Empire, people in Santa Rosa and Riverside, in San Diego and San Jose, people in communities along the coast and in the valley and in the foothills. And everywhere I went, I heard the same thing. People are fed up. They know what's happening. They see it with their own eyes. They know who the villains are. They know they deserve better. And they're willing to fight with everything they have to win it. It will be hard work. It is hard work. But we're here tonight because it's happening, because we're making it happen. I've never felt more confident that California is the greatest place in the world and that Californians are the greatest people in the world. It has been the honor of my life to have the very best of them by my side. To my family, thank you for everything. None of this would be possible without your love and support. To my team, thank you for your hard work every single day of this campaign. To the people of California, I say it all the time, there are no people like Californians. You are the best of the best. Thank you for the doors you knocked, the calls you made, the tweets you posted. Thank you for showing up to our town halls, for asking tough questions, for believing in a better California, and working so hard to bring people there with you. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. We've done the hard work and we did it together. Together we put the corporations on notice. Together we demanded more and better for the best state of them all. And now we just have to be patient. Thank you very much.
Anxious time for billionaire Tom Steyer, who's put $216 million of his own funding into this campaign. He's been running ads for months. He was one of the very first to get on the air with those ads, and just an anxious time as he's watching the numbers come in right now, trailing the top two. And of course, only two will advance to November. Thanks for being with us for our primary election night coverage here in California. I'm Edie Lambert.
And I'm Golston Dart, along with Curtis Ming and Ashley Zavala. We continue to look at all the latest numbers coming in, the results coming in, breaking them out for you so in a way that's digestible and you can see where the races are going right now. And speaking of races, the one we were just covering part of there with Tom Steyer, this is the race for California governor. Here's what it looks like in the early hours here with plenty more votes to still be counted. Steve Hilton in the lead right now with just about 26.7% of the vote. Javier Becerra right behind him, and then Tom Steyer right behind those top two candidates as it is at this hour, and then Chad Bianco trailing in a fairly distant fourth place.
Right. It does look like Republican support has really solidified much more around Steve Hilton, which was what the polling showed as well going into this election. Jason Marks is covering Chad Bianco's campaign, of course, in Riverside County, where Chad Bianco is the sheriff. So how is that party going? And these numbers are not exactly what they'd like to see so far.
No, you're exactly right. The numbers have been coming in, and obviously not what they want to see. They would like to see him move up a little bit in the rankings, but he's still running a distant fourth with what he was doing in many of the polls coming in tonight. Let me step out of the way and show you what's going on. Chad Bianco is here. He is not in the room right now. He's been mobbed by people all night long, as you can imagine, a bit of celebrity. He's been walking around, hugging his supporters, shaking hands, taking many pictures. Also, of course, he's watching those results roll in. Right now, he's outside in front of a big step and repeat, one of those backdrops, and he's just taking picture after picture after picture, and he hasn't turned anyone away yet. Obviously, he was hoping that these numbers, and he's still hoping that these numbers are going to change. He was very optimistic coming into the night that when these results started to come in, they would come in his way. I mentioned a minute ago, he was running, though, a distant fourth. So his supporters knew that it was an uphill battle coming into tonight. He spoke a couple minutes ago, more like a half an hour, 45 minutes ago, which was very surprising. Didn't realize he was going to take the mic so quickly in the night, but he told his supporters that this could be a long process, that they are going to count the votes for the next 24 hours, and then in the next coming days, they want to make sure every vote is counted and that every vote is correct before he essentially says, hey, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to become sheriff again. He's still sheriff, and if he does not get one of those two top spots for governor, he will then just continue to be sheriff. But the one thing he said is he will continue fighting for the people. He said he will make life in Sacramento, even though he'll be down here in Riverside, he will continue to make things for folks working in Sacramento, the lawmakers, make it very tough, because he believes that in a common sense approach, he believes that he can rein in the spending that government is doing, and he believes it's just a waste. And so he's going to continue to be very vocal about state government, even if he does not get one of those two spots and moves on in November. Now back to you.
Yeah, he's been very vocal, and it's very clear where he stands on those issues. And he's kind of been almost like a side piece to what Steve Hilton has done, more of the tougher kind of, well, Western sheriff that he is, you know.
Yeah, interesting in the debates too, because they were not going after each other. They were kind of on the same team as you were covering some of those.
Well, let's find out also what do you make of like what happens to Bianco here? I mean, it seems like he's starting to drift backwards.
Yeah, I mean, and that's in part because of President Donald Trump. Some might say President Donald Trump's, influence over the Republican Party. I mean, he still has sway, and so he did endorse Steve Hilton, and I think that may have really helped Steve tonight. And so but I want to stick with Southern California and actually go back to our congressional district races, because a big question tonight is whether or not Proposition 50, this newly drawn congressional district map, actually worked. And we've got Democratic strategist Steve Maviglio, Republican strategist Tim Rosales. Tim, I want to start with you, because down in Southern California, we're trying to get a temperature check with, Democrats redrew Ken Calvert's seat, a Republican, to try to fill his seat with the Democrats. Same with Darrell Issa, who has since retired. What do you make of what's going on down there tonight?
Well, what we see is Ken Calvert, who's been in Congress since I think the first President Bush was in office, is holding a pretty hefty lead right now against Republican Congresswoman Young Kim, who has represented parts of Orange County for several cycles, and they had to go at it. Right now, it looks like they're in the 1 and 2 spot. Maybe a Democrat could kind of creep in there. But the fact is Prop 50, which caused this redistricting and this redrawing, forced people like Young Kim and Ken Calvert to do battle with each other if they wanted to retain, their membership in Congress. And that really is the biggest result that we've seen from, what happened just, within this past year on Prop 50.
Steve, Democrats redrew these maps to give California a 5-seat advantage. But since then, with changes to the Voting Rights Act, Republicans have been able to redistrict and pick up more than double that amount at this point. Are Democrats really banking on these maps at this point?
Oh, absolutely. These are 5 seats that we would not have had, and that margin in the House would have been even greater for the Republicans that are trying to do things in Florida and several other states. And now there's more Democratic states are going to go at it too. New York, for example, is probably going to do something. So, but if you look at the results tonight, it's working very well for the Democrats. The Kiley seat around us is probably the most interesting one in terms of competitiveness. But all the other seats, including the Northern California one we talked about earlier, is going to be probably represented by a Democrat. So we'll get those 5 seats.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it right there. Steve, Tim, thank you so much. Edie and Golston, let's send it back to you.
All right. Ashley, thanks.
Well, we've got so much more to come here on our election coverage tonight. We have other reporters out from L.A., out to the Bay Area. We'll be going to them live.
We'll be right back.